This series begins with Eun Soo-hyun, who is a famous professor and writer. At that time, her life looks perfect because she has won many awards and has a loving husband and a 5-year-old son. One day, Soo-hyun's husband, Kang Soo-ho, lost his job as a reporter because his company didn't help him uncover a big secret about important people. Because of this, Soo-ho stayed at home to take care of their son, Kang Gun-woo, while Soo-hyun had to work. A few days later, Soo-hyun had to go on a work trip to another country. But when she got to the airport, she suddenly canceled her trip because Soo-ho told her that Gun-woo had a fever. Without thinking, Soo-hyun hurried back home to see how her son was doing. When she got home, Soo-hyun was happy to see Gun-woo feeling better, and playing in the yard. She then went inside to see Soo-ho, who was busy in the kitchen. At that time, Soo-ho was surprised that Soo-hyun canceled her work trip just to check on their son. Soon after, Soo-hyun and Soo-ho heard their dog barking loudly outside. They quickly ran out and noticed that the gate was open and their son, Gun-woo, was missing. Panicked, they began searching the area around their house, even splitting up to cover more ground. As the night went on, they still couldn't find Gun-woo. Then, Soo-hyun spotted one of Gun-woo's shoes lying in the street. Determined to find him, she kept searching and eventually came to a street crowded with people because of an accident. When she got closer, she was shocked to see that Gun-woo was the one who had been hurt and was being taken to the hospital by paramedics. Soo-hyun immediately called Soo-ho, her mother Oh Go-eun, and her manager Han Yuri, who was like a sister to her. They all rushed to the hospital, where Gun-woo was being treated. After waiting anxiously for what felt like forever, the doctor finally came out and told them that Gun-woo was in critical condition and might not survive due to his severe injuries. Soo-hyun couldn't believe what she was hearing, but Go-eun and Yuri tried to comfort her, saying they needed to be prepared for the worst. Not long after, Soo-hyun was by Gun-woo's side in the hospital room, hoping desperately that he would wake up and get better. Sadly, that hope was shattered when Gun-woo took his last breath right in front of her. At Gun-woo's funeral, many people came to pay their respects, all looking heartbroken over the loss of Soo-hyun's young son. Soo-hyun was devastated and couldn't accept that her son was gone so soon. She later went to the spot where Gun-woo was found, crying over the unfairness of his death. Sometime later, Soo-hyun and Soo-ho had to go to court because of the accident that killed Gun-woo. The person responsible for the accident, named Kwon Ji-woong, eventually turned himself in. It was revealed that Ji-woong was a powerful official in Seoul. During the trial, Ji-woong's lawyer tried to blame Soo-hyun, arguing that she neglected Gun-woo, who was sick, and left him alone. Despite this, Soo-hyun remained calm, believing that Ji-woong would be punished for what he did. However, after several trials, the judge decided that Ji-woong was innocent and ordered his release. This decision made Soo-ho very angry because he felt it was unfair. He even tried to attack Ji-woong, but the guards stopped him. The judge stood by his decision, which wasn't surprising since Ji-woong had connections and power that helped him escape punishment. One night, Soo-hyun ran into Ji-woong by chance. She told him to apologize to Gun-woo for what he had done. But instead of showing remorse, Ji-woong dismissed Soo-hyun, acting like he wasn't responsible for Gun-woo's death. He even complained that his career was ruined because of the case. Before leaving, Ji-woong told Soo-hyun to forget about what happened to her son and move on with her life. Furious and unable to accept his cold words, Soo-hyun got into her car and hit Ji-woong, killing him. Because of this, Soo-hyun was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Her lawyer had asked the judge for a lighter sentence, but she admitted that she didn't regret what she had done, so the judge gave her the full 10-year sentence. The next day, Soo-hyun's case became a big topic, with many people talking about it. Some people supported Soo-hyun, believing she was just trying to get justice for her son's death. However, others thought what she did was wrong. Because of this situation, Soo-hyun's successful career fell apart since she had to spend many years in prison. Meanwhile, Soo-ho got a new job as a news anchor at a TV station. But things didn't go well for him either. During a broadcast about Soo-hyun's case, Soo-ho changed the script to share his own opinion, saying that she was innocent. His boss was furious and fired him right after the show. In prison, Soo-hyun chose to cut off all contact with the outside world, including Soo-ho. She refused visits and didn't want to talk to anyone. Despite this, Soo-ho didn't give up. He kept writing letters to her and left them with the prison guards, hoping she would read them. In his letters, Soo-ho promised that he would never stop trying to prove Soo-hyun's innocence. As he continued to investigate, he found out that some lawyers and high-ranking officials had been involved in covering up the truth about Gunwoo's death. Time passed, but Soo-hyun remained heartbroken over the loss of her only son. She was so deeply affected that she became careless, even injuring her hand while sewing in the prison workshop because she wasn't paying attention. The injury was serious enough that the other prisoners quickly took her to the hospital for treatment. During this time, a man named Kwon Shan-yeol noticed Soo-hyun. He was working as a cleaner in the prison, but it seemed like he had another reason for being there because he wanted to get closer to Soo-hyun. After Soo-hyun woke up, Go-eun felt relieved that Soo-hyun was okay. However, Soo-hyun began to remember the details of what happened the day Gunwoo died, which made her sad all over again. In her memory, Soo-hyun was sure that she had locked the gate of their house properly. This made her feel that Gunwoo's death wasn't her fault. Meanwhile, Soo-ho started to get more information about the accident that killed Gunwoo. He met with a politician named Kim Jun, who he believed was behind the cover-up of Gunwoo's death. There, Soo-ho boldly confronted Kim Jun, sharing his suspicions, but Kim Jun confidently denied any involvement. Soo-ho didn't back down and told Kim Jun that he would expose all his wrongdoing. In response, Kim Jun revealed that he had a recording showing how Gunwoo got out of the gate. Kim Jun hinted that this recording might make Soo-hyun angry with Soo-ho. Back in prison, Soo-hyun returned to her cell but still refused to talk to anyone. Even when she received another letter from Soo-ho, she didn't pay attention to it. Despite this, a fellow prisoner named Jung Hyung-ja, who shared a cell with Soo-hyun, felt sorry for her and tried to befriend her. Soon after, Hyung-ja started conversations with Soo-hyun, hoping to cheer her up. Gradually, Soo-hyun began to smile again and participated in activities with the other prisoners, although she still sometimes thought about Gunwoo. One day, Soo-hyun saw a children's choir practicing with Shan-yeol, and it reminded her of her son. Meanwhile, Soo-ho's mother, Jong Myung-hee, visited Go-eun and Yuri to talk about Soo-ho's future. She felt that Soo-ho still had a long life ahead of him and suggested that he and Soo-hyun should separate. Myung-hee believed that if they separated, Soo-ho could focus on his career, especially since he had just received an offer to work as a reporter in America. But there, Yuri felt sad after hearing Myung-hee's suggestion and quickly went to the prison to visit Soo-hyun. Yuri asked Soo-hyun to meet with Soo-ho so they could discuss the future of their relationship. Following Yuri's request, Soo-hyun agreed to meet Soo-ho. During their conversation, he told her that he would keep searching for the truth about Gunwoo's death. Unfortunately, Soo-hyun told Soo-ho to move on without her, realizing that she would be in prison for a long time. In another conversation, Hyung-ja, a fellow prisoner, shared her story with Soo-hyun about how she ended up in prison. Hyung-ja explained that several years ago, she caught her husband cheating. In a moment of darkness and rage, she set fire to the house where her husband and his mistress were staying, not realizing there were other people in the house. Tragically, many people died in the fire, and the only survivor was an 8-year-old boy. Hyung-ja, who was now seriously ill, advised Soo-hyun to send letters of apology to the boy, knowing that she might not live much longer. Several years passed, and Shan-yeol, who had been working as a handyman during the day, started working for Kim Jun at night. Shan-yeol took on dangerous tasks for Kim Jun, including spying on his political rivals. After Soo-hyun was released from prison, the first thing she did was visit Gunwoo's grave. At the cemetery, she coincidentally ran into Shan-yeol, who was also there visiting another grave. It started raining, and Shan-yeol kindly offered his umbrella to Soo-hyun. After leaving the cemetery, Soo-hyun went home to see Go-eun, who was overjoyed to see her daughter free again. The next day, Soo-hyun surprised Yuri by visiting her boutique. Yuri, who was happy to see Soo-hyun out of prison, tried to encourage her and suggested that she return to her career. Later, Soo-hyun went to the police station to find information about the boy Hyung-ja had mentioned, but it was difficult to get any details. However, Soo-hyun was determined and continued searching until she found a clue by meeting with Professor Kim Sira. During their meeting, CRA offered to help Soo-hyun find the boy. That evening, Soo-hyun had dinner with Yuri at a restaurant. Yuri shared that she now travels abroad often for work. During their conversation, Soo-hyun revealed that she had once considered divorcing Soo-ho because she didn't want to interfere with his career. However, Go-eun didn't agree with the idea, so Soo-hyun decided to stay in the marriage. After dinner, Soo-hyun returned to her old house, which now looked neglected. As she walked through the house, memories of the happy times she spent with her family flooded back. Overcome with sadness about Gunwoo, Soo-hyun, exhausted, eventually fell asleep in Gunwoo's room. The next day, when Soo-hyun left her house, she heard the sound of the gate closing automatically. This made her confident that she had indeed closed the gate properly on the day Gunwoo died. A little later, Soo-hyun received a call from CRA, who had found the address of the boy Soo-hyun was searching for. To her surprise, the boy was Shan-yeol, the person she had met before. Without hesitation, Soo-hyun rushed to the address CRA had given her, but when she arrived, the house was empty because Shan-yeol was out on a job, following a car carrying an official. During this task, Shan-yeol almost got caught and was beaten by thugs, but he managed to escape and hurried back home. When Shan-yeol returned home, he was surprised to find Soo-hyun there. Soo-hyun handed him a letter from Hyungja. However, when Shan-yeol read the letter, he became angry as it reminded him of painful memories. Even though Soo-hyun told him that Hyungja had passed away, Shan-yeol didn't want to accept Soo-hyun's presence or the message she brought from Hyungja. At one point, Shan-yeol lost a necklace that his mother had given him, and Soo-hyun, knowing how much it meant to him, decided to help him find it, even if it meant searching by the river. She eventually found the necklace and told Shan-yeol that they shared a similar fate, both having lost someone they loved unfairly. Meanwhile, Soo-ho had become the director of ABS News Company. When he heard that Soo-hyun had been released from prison, he immediately went to see her to talk about their marriage. At first, Soo-hyun was hesitant to reunite with Soo-ho, but after he kept insisting that he needed her in his life, Soo-hyun's heart softened, and she decided to stay together with him. The next day, Soo-ho took Soo-hyun to meet his mother, Mi-young-hee, and his younger brother, Kang Tae-ho. While Soo-ho was there, Mi-young-hee acted welcoming towards Soo-hyun. However, as soon as Soo-ho left, Mi-young-hee started being harsh and unfriendly towards her daughter-in-law. Later that evening, Soo-ho took Soo-hyun out to show how grateful he was that they were back together. They didn't realize that a mysterious person was secretly watching them. When they returned to their old house, they met their new neighbors, a woman named Yoon Hae-gum and her son, Yoon Hee-jae, who introduced themselves. The next morning at the ABS office, one of Soo-ho's co-workers asked him to invite Soo-hyun to appear on a TV show. Soo-ho refused because he didn't want to make his wife uncomfortable, especially since the show might bring up her past. Since Soo-ho didn't agree, his co-worker decided to approach Soo-hyun directly without telling Soo-ho. Meanwhile, someone was secretly collecting various photos related to Soo-hyun's case. A few days later, Soo-hyun agreed to appear on the ABS show where she shared her difficult story, with Soo-ho by her side for support. During the filming, Soo-hyun received a package from someone, which was set aside on a table until she finished filming. After the interview ended, Soo-hyun received a call from Shan-yeol, who asked to meet up. Soo-hyun felt happy because Shan-yeol was finally willing to talk to her, after previously avoiding her because she was friends with Hyungja. A little later, Soo-hyun opened a package that had been sent to her. Inside, she found photos showing Soo-ho having an affair with a mysterious woman. Soo-hyun was shocked and couldn't believe that her husband, who always claimed to love her, was secretly seeing another woman. Unbeknownst to Soo-hyun, the mysterious person who had been following her and sent the photos was actually Ji-woong's son. He wanted revenge because Soo-hyun had killed his father. That evening, Soo-hyun planned to confront Soo-ho about the photos. But before she could, Yuri and Goon unexpectedly visited her house, so she decided to hold off on her plan. When she saw Yuri, Soo-hyun began to suspect that Yuri might be the woman in the photos with Soo-ho. On another day, Soo-ho invited Tae-ho to lunch during a break from work at the hospital. During their meal, he asked Tae-ho, who is a doctor, for information about respiratory and heart system equipment. Meanwhile, Yuri noticed that Soo-hyun was acting strangely and sent her a message to check in. At that time, Soo-hyun didn't want to share her problems with Yuri, especially since she was busy volunteering at a nursing home. While working there, Soo-hyun suddenly remembered that the date on the photos of Soo-ho's affair was the same day Soo-ho had visited her in prison. She then asked the ABS staff who had received the package of photos, but they admitted they hadn't paid much attention to who had sent it. The scene switched to a girl named Hong Soo-jin, who was making a rug with Shan-yeol's face on it. Soo-jin is a close friend of Shan-yeol, and whenever he needs someone to talk to, Soo-jin is always there to listen. She often comforts Shan-yeol when he is feeling down. One day, Shan-yeol went to the nursing home where Soo-hyun was volunteering. While there, they witnessed an old woman being harassed by a man who was trying to take her money. When the man hit the old woman, Shan-yeol stepped in and fought back, which led to both of them being taken to the police station. Soon after, Soo-hyun arrived at the station, claiming to be Shan-yeol's guardian, which allowed him to be released. Afterward, they talked, and Shan-yeol admitted that he had accidentally seen photos of Soo-ho's affair. He mentioned that the photos looked like they were taken by a professional photographer using high-quality equipment. On her way home, Soo-hyun ran into Hae-gum, and they had a brief conversation. Hae-gum thanked Soo-hyun because in the past, her son, who had no friends, was always accompanied by the late Gun-woo. Hae-gum said she felt indebted to Soo-hyun and promised to repay her kindness someday. When Soo-hyun got home, she finally showed the affair photos to Soo-ho. Soo-ho was shocked and tried to explain that the affair was just a brief, meaningless fling. After hearing his explanation, Soo-hyun decided to forgive him and suggested they start over. The next day at work, Soo-ho reviewed all the surveillance camera footage to find out who had sent the affair photos to Soo-hyun. Unfortunately, he couldn't see the sender's face clearly in the footage. One day, Soo-hyun met with Yuri at a cafe because Yuri was worried about her. When Yuri asked how Soo-hyun was doing, she opened up about her problems, including her husband's affair. As Soo-hyun talked about Soo-ho's infidelity, Yuri started to look uncomfortable and anxious. Suddenly, Yuri made an excuse to leave and quickly said goodbye. Meanwhile, Go-eun called Soo-hyun to tell her that she had received a mysterious package. When Go-eun opened it, she was shocked to find photos of Soo-ho with another woman. Upset, she went to meet Soo-hyun at a bus stop. When Soo-hyun arrived, Go-eun expressed her disappointment with Soo-ho, who she had always thought was a good son-in-law. Go-eun had always encouraged Soo-hyun to keep her marriage together. There, Soo-hyun tried to calm her mother down by explaining that she had already discussed the situation with Soo-ho. At the same time, Soo-ho made a phone call, trying to find out if the person on the other end was the one who had sent the affair photos to Soo-hyun. Instead of answering, the person on the phone invited Soo-ho to meet at a hotel. On the other side of things, Shan-yeol visited the orphanage where he used to live and discovered that the person who sent the photos to Soo-hyun also once lived there. Shan-yeol then asked Soo-jin for help in tracking down the photo sender. Unbeknownst to Shan-yeol, someone was secretly watching his every move from a distance. At the same time, Soo-hyun noticed Soo-ho driving somewhere, so she decided to secretly follow him. She was shocked when she saw Soo-ho going to a hotel. When she watched him enter a room and meet Hae-gum, she immediately suspected that Hae-gum was the woman Soo-ho had been having an affair with. Feeling devastated, Soo-hyun quietly left the hotel without confronting them. A little while later, Soo-hyun sent Soo-ho a message saying that she had seen him with a woman at the hotel. When Soo-ho read the message, he panicked and rushed home to talk to her. But when he arrived, Soo-hyun was not there. She had gone to meet Hae-gum to confront her about the affair. At that time, Hae-gum didn't deny anything and admitted what had happened between her and Soo-ho. She apologized and assured Soo-hyun that she no longer had any relationship with Soo-ho. However, Soo-hyun found it hard to believe her. When Soo-hyun returned home, she was too overwhelmed to listen to Soo-ho's explanations, so she decided to go to her mother's house to calm down. At Go-eun's house, Soo-hyun tried to figure out who had sent her the photos of Soo-ho's affair, but Go-eun advised her to let it go, fearing that it would only complicate things further. Meanwhile, Soo-ho became more determined to find out who had sent the photos. He asked an old acquaintance, Lee Han-sung, who used to be a detective, to help him investigate. The next day, Soo-ho was surprised when Kim Jun visited his office. During their conversation, Kim Jun hinted at the recent interview where Soo-ho and Soo-hyun had appeared, making Soo-ho suspect that Kim Jun might be behind all the recent troubles. There, Soo-ho firmly warned Kim Jun not to try anything against him or Soo-hyun, making it clear that he would not sit by quietly. After the meeting, Kim Jun, sitting in his car, ordered his men to keep an eye on Soo-ho. Meanwhile, Soo-hyun visited Shan-yeol at the warehouse where he worked and brought him some food. During their conversation, Soo-hyun noticed that Shan-yeol often had bruises on his face and asked him about it, but Shan-yeol tried to brush it off and avoid answering. Not long after Soo-hyun left, Soo-jin arrived to give Shan-yeol some information about Kwon Min-hyuk, a young man connected to Shan-yeol. Back at Go-eun's house, Soo-hyun was looking through the photos of Soo-ho's affair that had been sent to Go-eun. She noticed a website address on one of the photos, which led her to an old news story about a car accident. The victim, Kim Eun-min, was a housewife who was allegedly hit because she crossed the road carelessly. Curious about the case, Soo-hyun contacted the reporter, Jong Jin-hui, who had written the article about the accident, hoping to find out who had sent her the photos. In another situation, Myung-hee invited Soo-hyun to spend time together. During their outing, Myung-hee kept pressuring Soo-hyun and warned her not to do anything that could ruin Soo-ho's reputation as a well-known reporter. Myung-hee even asked Soo-hyun to pretend that their family was happy and harmonious. After hearing Myung-hee's hurtful words, Soo-hyun returned to her mother's house and broke down in tears. At that moment, Yuri arrived, saw that Soo-hyun was upset, and tried to comfort her. Not long after, Yuri secretly met with Soo-ho in the yard to discuss something important. On another day, Soo-hyun met with Jin-hui at a cafe to learn more about the news story Jin-hui had written. Jin-hui explained that Eun-min, the victim of the accident, is actually the wife of Ji-won. Eun-min is still in a coma and has been in the hospital for a long time. When Soo-hyun heard the name of the hospital, she remembered that Tae-ho also worked there. She immediately contacted Tae-ho to confirm Eun-min's condition. There, Tae-ho told her that Eun-min had indeed been a patient at the hospital for a long time. Meanwhile, with the information provided by Soo-jin, Shan-yeol managed to find Min-hyuk, who was being attacked by a group of thugs. Shortly after, Shan-yeol jumped in to save Min-hyuk by fighting off the thugs. After successfully defending him, Shan-yeol took the injured Min-hyuk to the nearest hospital. At the same hospital, Soo-hyun was on her way to visit Eun-min when she was surprised to see Shan-yeol there as well. He was also visiting Eun-min, the woman who was the victim of the accident. Before Soo-hyun could ask why Shan-yeol was there, Eun-min's condition suddenly worsened. There, Shan-yeol quickly provided first aid while they waited for the doctor and nurse to arrive. This situation brought back painful memories for Soo-hyun of Gun-woo's accident. The next day, Soo-jin visited Shan-yeol at his workplace. It turns out that their close friendship began because they both had heart disease. When Soo-jin felt like giving up on her illness, Shan-yeol encouraged her to keep fighting. During their conversation, it was revealed that Shan-yeol is not the boy Soo-hyun was looking for. In fact, Shan-yeol is the son of Eun-min and Ji-won. Then, Soo-hyun started to suspect something strange about Eun-min's accident case, so she secretly took the case file to study it. At Go-eun's restaurant, Soo-ho was deeply regretful and apologized many times for cheating on Soo-hyun. And Soo-hyun, who overheard his sincere apology, began to soften and decided to forgive him. She even considered returning home with Soo-ho. Soo-hyun also mended her relationship with Yuri, whom she had previously suspected of being involved in her marital problems. After reviewing Eun-min's accident files, Soo-hyun discovered some interesting details, such as the speed of the car that hit Eun-min. She wondered why the car was going so fast on a busy city street, almost as if the driver was intentionally speeding. Soo-hyun then called Jin-hui to discuss her findings. One day at the hospital, Soo-jin, who was taking care of Min-hyuk, accidentally met Tae-ho. Although it was their first meeting, Tae-ho was impressed by Soo-jin's cheerful personality. Not long after, Tae-ho tried to contact Soo-hyun to discuss Eun-min, but unfortunately, Soo-hyun didn't answer his call. Meanwhile, Soo-jin was surprised when some thugs showed up at the hospital looking for Min-hyuk. Panicking, she called Shan-yeol and asked him to come to the hospital immediately. Shan-yeol quickly arrived and fought off the thugs to protect Min-hyuk. Soon after, Soo-hyun finally called Tae-ho to ask what he wanted to talk about, but she got distracted when she saw Shan-yeol at the hospital and quickly hung up the call. She tried to catch up with him, who was leaving on his motorbike, but he didn't want to talk. Instead, he called Soo-hyun a murderer, leaving her shocked and speechless. That night, Soo-hyun couldn't stop thinking about what Shan-yeol said, and it caused her to have a nightmare. And Soo-ho, noticing her distress, suggested they move to a new house. However, Soo-hyun refused because she had many memories of Gun-woo in their current home. A few days later, Kim Joon started building a positive image for himself in front of the public as he prepared for the upcoming election. Despite being busy, Kim Joon kept a close watch on Soo-ho, whom he saw as a potential threat because Soo-ho was a well-known journalist who often exposed issues with politicians. Curious about why Shan-yeol's attitude toward her had changed, Soo-hyun decided to visit him at the warehouse where he worked. Shan-yeol was surprised that Soo-hyun still wanted to see him and even brought him food, despite the harsh things he had said to her. Since Shan-yeol hadn't revealed that he was the son of Ji-woon and Eun-min, he lied to Soo-hyun, claiming that he had found Eun-min's son. Soo-hyun, unaware of the truth, promised to help Shan-yeol uncover what really happened in Eun-min's accident. The next day, Shan-yeol continued his task of keeping an eye on Soo-ho. At the same time, without Shan-yeol knowing, Han Sung was secretly monitoring Shan-yeol's movement. That evening, Soo-ho, trying to rebuild his relationship with Soo-hyun, invited her to dinner at a restaurant. While there, as she watched the chef grilling food, Soo-hyun suddenly remembered something about the boy who survived the fire and his fear of flames. However, she realized that Shan-yeol didn't seem to have this fear, which made her start feeling suspicious about him. On another day, Shan-yeol visited Min-hyuk at the hospital, where his condition was starting to improve. When he entered the room, Shan-yeol accidentally noticed burn scars on Min-hyuk's back. Feeling sorry for him, Shan-yeol gave Min-hyuk a notebook containing a letter of apology from Hyung-ja. After reading it, Min-hyuk became angry, as it reminded him of his painful past, and he questioned who Shan-yeol really was. Shan-yeol didn't answer and chose to leave. As he walked down the hospital hallway, Shan-yeol remembered the moment his father died and how his mother faced so much hatred from society. From that sadness, Shan-yeol developed a desire to take revenge on Soo-hyun. Back in the present, Soo-hyun started noticing more strange things about Shan-yeol's identity, making her increasingly curious about who he really was. The next day, Soo-hyun decided to ignore all phone calls from Shan-yeol. Soo-ho suggested that Soo-hyun stop seeing Shan-yeol, especially since he was connected to Hyung-ja. Even so, Soo-hyun admitted that she felt sorry for the boy who survived the fire and felt a sense of responsibility toward him. At the hospital, Soo-jin, who was visiting Eun-min, once again ran into Tae-ho. She was very sweet to Tae-ho, and Soo-ho's brother began to be attracted to her, not realizing that Soo-jin was intentionally getting close to him to gather information about Soo-ho and Soo-hyun. At a restaurant, Soo-ho met with Han-sung to review the surveillance photos that the former detective had collected. As Soo-ho looked through the photos, he was surprised to see that Shan-yeol appeared in some of them. Han-sung explained that Shan-yeol often worked with Kim Jun to help him deal with his political opponents. Meanwhile, Min-hyuk was puzzled about why Shan-yeol kept helping him, especially since Shan-yeol even paid off all of Min-hyuk's debts to the thugs with money he earned from working for Kim Jun. A few days later, during a big campaign event, Kim Jun approached Soo-ho and asked him to quit his job at the television station and join his campaign team. To persuade him, Kim Jun promised Soo-ho a high-ranking government position if he accepted the offer. However, Soo-ho, not wanting to work with a corrupt politician like Kim Jun, firmly rejected the proposal. In a separate conversation, Kim Jun met with Shan-yeol and asked him to stop doing dangerous work and return to his medical studies. Kim Jun said he would continue to support Shan-yeol's future, as he had promised Ji-won. But Shan-yeol told Kim Jun that he didn't want to rely on him anymore and preferred to make his own money rather than depending on Kim Jun. At Go-eun's restaurant, Yuri felt anxious, still thinking about her recent conversation with Soo-ho. However, when Soo-hyun arrived, Yuri tried to act normal, hiding any signs that she was worried about something. The next day, Soo-hyun met with the detective who handled Eun-min's accident case. During their conversation, Soo-hyun learned that the fate of the person who hit Eun-min was never discovered. The detective also mentioned that Eun-min's son often posted petitions on social media, seeking justice for his mother's accident. After the meeting, Soo-hyun began searching for these petitions online and eventually found an account that she believed belonged to Eun-min's son. Later, Soo-hyun invited Tae-ho to lunch at the hospital cafeteria. During their conversation, Soo-hyun discovered that Shan-yeol was a medical student at the same university as Tae-ho and had undergone heart surgery 3 times in the past. With this information, Soo-hyun realized that Shan-yeol was not the fire victim she had been looking for. Wasting no time, Soo-hyun called Shan-yeol and asked to meet him at a cafe. Shan-yeol agreed, and on his way there, he thought about his plans for revenge. It turned out that Shan-yeol had been spying on Soo-hyun since her trial and had even taken a job at the women's prison just to keep an eye on her. When they met at the cafe, Soo-hyun looked at Shan-yeol seriously, but she pretended not to know the truth about his identity. She asked Shan-yeol to tell Eun-min's son that she deeply understood the pain of losing someone, as she had lost her son Gun-woo. Shan-yeol responded by saying that Eun-min's son also felt devastated after losing his father. Soo-hyun then told Shan-yeol that if Eun-min's son wanted to take revenge on her, he could, but she asked him not to harm her family. After the meeting at the cafe, Soo-hyun invited Go-eun, Soo-ho, and Myung-hee to a massage place together. During their time there, Soo-hyun promised her mother that she would protect her family and wouldn't let anyone disturb the peace of the people she loved. Meanwhile, Myung-hee asked Soo-ho if he still loved Soo-hyun. Soo-ho just smiled in response because he knew that, deep down, Myung-hee still cared for Soo-hyun as her daughter-in-law. In his secret room, Shan-yeol was practicing boxing, using it as a way to release his anger towards Soo-hyun. He was furious because he believed that Soo-hyun was acting like a victim, even though she was the one who killed his father. This made Shan-yeol even more determined to take revenge on her. A few days later, Soo-hyun met with CRA again and discovered that the professor had given her false information about the fire victims. After some convincing, Soo-hyun managed to get CRA to reveal the true identity of the fire victim Hyungja had mentioned, and it was Min-hyuk. With this new information, Soo-hyun met with Min-hyuk to talk about Hyungja's apology. However, Min-hyuk was angry and told Soo-hyun not to see him again. Soo-hyun reminded Min-hyuk not to seek revenge, warning him that it would only ruin his life. She shared that she didn't want him to end up with the same regret she had, after seeking revenge that had ultimately destroyed her own family and career. In a fancy art gallery, Shan-yeol secretly met with Hae-gum to gather important information for Kim Jun. Even though he had been warned to stay away from dangerous work, Shan-yeol was determined to keep helping Kim Jun. And he wouldn't let Soo-ho get in the way of Kim Jun's plans to win the upcoming election. Meanwhile, at a small food stall, Soo-ho continued to dig for information about Kim Jun with the help of Han-sung. Han-sung told Soo-ho about a luxury gallery that was being used to funnel Kim Jun's illegal funds. Han-sung also showed Soo-ho photos of Soo-hyun spending time with Shan-yeol, which shocked Soo-ho. As a result, Soo-ho asked Soo-hyun to stop seeing Shan-yeol. Despite this, Soo-hyun secretly continued her investigation into Shan-yeol. She discovered Shan-yeol's connection with Kim Jun, including his attendance at a donation event organized by Kim Jun at the hospital. Soo-hyun also found out that Eunmin's medical bills were being paid by Kim Jun's foundation. Shan-yeol's plan for revenge moved forward when he tricked Soo-hyun into getting Soo-ho's car dashboard recording files. One of these files showed a meeting between Yuri and Soo-ho. However, before Soo-hyun could open the file, she was startled by a loud noise outside. It turned out that Hee-jae, Hae-gum's son, was having a seizure. Without hesitation, Soo-hyun rushed to provide first aid to the boy. When Soo-hyun took Hee-jae back home, she entered Hae-gum's house and discovered evidence that proved Hae-gum wasn't the woman Soo-ho was having an affair with. Realizing she had been caught, Hae-gum admitted that she was actually Kim Jun's mistress and had asked Soo-ho for help to escape from Kim Jun's control. After talking with Hae-gum, Soo-hyun decided to visit Yuri to share her frustrations. However, since Yuri was busy, Soo-hyun chose to check the files on Soo-ho's car dashboard while waiting for Yuri to finish her work. A little later, Soo-hyun heard Yuri screaming because she was being beaten by her mother, Mak Ryan. Just as Soo-hyun was about to help, she was stopped in her tracks when she heard a recording of Soo-ho and Yuri being intimate. It was then that Soo-hyun realized Yuri had been Soo-ho's secret lover all along. In another room, Shan-yeol watched and smiled, satisfied that his plan to ruin Soo-hyun's life had succeeded. Looking back to the past, the bond between Soo-hyun and Yuri began when they were children. Soo-hyun had helped Yuri when she was badly beaten by her mother. Soo-hyun took Yuri home, and since then, Yuri became close to Soo-hyun's family. Sadly, the same Yuri who was once like a sister to Soo-hyun ended up betraying her. Sometime earlier, Shan-yeol had secretly paid Mak Ryan to go to Yuri's boutique and beat her own daughter. Fortunately, Go-eun arrived just in time to protect Yuri, forcing Mak Ryan to leave. Not long after, Soo-hyun had a private conversation with Yuri about the affair she had with Soo-ho. Yuri broke down in tears, while Soo-hyun, angry and hurt, told her that they would talk more about it after she had calmed down. Soo-hyun then got into her car and finally let out her emotions, crying as she realized that the person who had betrayed her was someone she had always considered a sister. Meanwhile, at the office, Soo-ho received news that Soo-hyun had found out about his affair with Yuri. Feeling ashamed for betraying his wife, Soo-ho still went home to face Soo-hyun, who expressed her deep disappointment. Soo-ho immediately knelt in front of her, repeatedly apologizing, but Soo-hyun refused to forgive him. The next day, Soo-hyun met with Mak Ryan to warn her not to bother Yuri, whom she had neglected since childhood. When Mak Ryan brought up the affair between Soo-ho and Yuri, Soo-hyun brushed it off and revealed that she already knew Shan-yeol was the mastermind behind the chaos in her life. On another day, Soo-hyun met Shan-yeol by a lake, far away from other people. When Shan-yeol threatened that he could kill her, Soo-hyun wasn't afraid at all. She told him that death was easy compared to life, where people sometimes have to endure painful things. That evening, Soo-ho confronted Shan-yeol and warned him to take out his revenge on Soo-ho instead of Soo-hyun. Soo-ho even said he was willing to do whatever Shan-yeol wanted, including quitting his job, as long as Shanyul didn't harm Soohyun anymore. Shanyul didn't respond to Suho's words and instead went to visit Eunmin at the hospital, bringing her a new pair of shoes. While there, Shanyul told his mother, who was lying weakly in bed, that he wanted to take her on a vacation together. Sometime later, Haegum decided to work with Suho and Han Sung to get back at Kim Jun. They planned to ruin Kim Jun's reputation when he appeared as a guest on the TV show Suho was hosting. Unfortunately, Shanyul found out about their plan and quickly reported it to Kim Jun. As days passed, Yuri, feeling guilty, kept trying to apologize to Soohyun. Although Soohyun admitted she was still upset, she said she would continue to treat Yuri kindly, mainly to protect Goon's feelings, since Goon considered Yuri like her own daughter. The next day, Soohyun received news from Shanyul that Goon was in the hospital. Without hesitation, Soohyun rushed to the hospital to check on Goon, who fortunately wasn't seriously injured from her fall. After making sure Goon was okay, Soohyun asked Yuri to stay with Goon while she wanted to take care of something important. Soohyun then drove to Shanyul's place, where she discovered a secret room filled with photos of her and her family. Seeing this, Soohyun realized that Shanyul had been secretly following her for a long time. At the same time, Suho, Haegum, and Han Sung were getting ready to carry out their plan against Kim Jun. However, Kim Jun, who had already learned about their plan, arrived at the interview location with confidence. He even greeted Suho, who was hosting the event. As the interview began, Suho brought up the issue of Kim Jun's illegal funds and announced that a witness would come forward to testify. But unfortunately, Haegum had been threatened by Kim Jun's men, preventing her from testifying. With Suho's plan failing, Kim Jun came out looking even better, gaining more fame and public sympathy. After the interview, Kim Jun arrogantly handed Suho a photo of his affair with Yuri, revealing that Kim Jun had been watching Suho all along through Shanyul. After the interview, Kim Jun met with Shanyul and introduced him to all the key people who had been involved in Soohyun's case, including lawyers and judges. Shanyul was interested in meeting these important figures because he was still determined to carry out his revenge against Soohyun, even though his mother, Eunmin, had previously advised him not to seek revenge for his father's death. A little while later, after his meeting with the officials, Shanyul saw Soohyun standing in the middle of the road, blocking his way. He briefly considered running her over but decided against it and got out of the car to talk to her. Soohyun told him that she already knew his true identity and also mentioned some suspicious details about Eunmin's accident. When Shanyul got home, he couldn't stop thinking about what Soohyun had said and began to wonder if his mother's accident was more than just a simple accident. On another day, Myung-hee heard rumors from her friends that Suho was having an affair with Yuri. Panicking, she immediately went to Suho to ask him about it. Suho couldn't deny the truth, which left Myung-hee disappointed. However, she didn't suggest that Suho divorce Soohyun, as she didn't want his career to be ruined. At the hospital, Goon woke up but couldn't remember what had happened to her. Soohyun, who was by her side, told her mom not to worry about anything and just rest. Later, when Soohyun met Yuri, Yuri finally explained how Goon ended up getting hurt and was brought to the hospital. Yuri admitted that she had confessed to Goon about her affair with Suho. This shocking news caused Goon to faint, and that's when she got injured. Soohyun also learned from a nurse that it was Shanyul who had brought Goon to the hospital. Soohyun was surprised by this, especially since Shanyul had always seemed intent on getting revenge on her. Another day, while Shanyul was at work, he received a phone call informing him that Eunmin's condition had worsened. He rushed to the hospital, only to find out that his mother had passed away, leaving him heartbroken. Sometime later, at the funeral home, Soo-jin gave Shanyul a cell phone that she had found among Eunmin's belongings. Soohyun also came to pay her respects to Eunmin. As Soohyun was about to leave, Shanyul briefly stopped her, but then let her go. Just before this, Shanyul had listened to a voice recording of his father and Soohyun that was stored on the cell phone Soo-jin had found. Back in the present, Soohyun returns home to find Suho packing up his things. Suho asks her about Eunmin's funeral and suggests that she should stop being close to Shanyul. However, Soohyun firmly tells Suho not to interfere with her decisions. Meanwhile, at her boutique, Yuri often finds herself lost in thought, reflecting on all the kind things Soohyun has done for her, even though Yuri has wronged her. At home, Goon, who has just returned from the hospital, is busy cooking while talking about how kind Shanyul has been. At that time, Soo-hyun learns that Go-eun has known Shan-yeol for quite some time and appreciates his kindness, especially since Go-eun believes she is still alive thanks to Shan-yeol's help. After Eunmin's funeral, Shan-yeol meets with Kim Jun and bravely expresses his desire to investigate the details of his mother's accident. Although Kim Jun suggests that Shan-yeol should just forget everything, he also shows some respect for Shan-yeol's decision. Later, Shan-yeol returns to his now empty house and listens to a recording on his mother's cell phone of a conversation between Ji-woong and Soo-hyun. In the recording, Soo-hyun begs Ji-woong to apologize to Gun-woo, but Ji-woong responds coldly, talking only about money and business, showing no empathy for Soo-hyun's pain as a mother who had just lost her son. As Shan-yeol listens, he slowly closes his eyes, remembering all his childhood memories. In the days that followed, Shan-yeol spent most of his time just sleeping until Soo-hyun visited him, bringing food. Shan-yeol suspected that Soo-hyun came only to learn more about Eunmin's accident, but in reality, Soo-hyun was trying to reach out to him. Seeing Shan-yeol suffering after losing his mother, Eunmin, made Soo-hyun realize how important it was to take care of her own mother, Go-eun. Without delay, Soo-hyun took Go-eun out for a walk and dinner, enjoying the city lights together. During their time out, Soo-hyun revealed the truth about Shan-yeol, that he was the one who sent the photos of Soo-ho's affair and the one who took Go-eun to the hospital. Although surprised, Go-eun advised Soo-hyun not to hold too much hatred toward Shan-yeol. That night, Shan-yeol called Soo-hyun and played the last recording of her conversation with Ji-woong. Soo-hyun confirmed that the conversation was real. Shan-yeol then shared that he understood Soo-hyun's pain of losing someone she loved because he felt the same way. However, instead of dealing with the grief, Shan-yeol chose to seek revenge, as it was the only thing that gave him a reason to keep going. A few days later, Soo-jin met with Shan-yeol and revealed that before Eunmin passed away, she had said something strange. On the other hand, Soo-hyun gathered evidence about Eunmin's accident and gave it all to Shan-yeol. When Shan-yeol asked who was behind his mother's accident, Soo-hyun didn't hesitate to say it was Kim Jun. As time passed, more strange details about Eunmin's accident came to light. The person who caused the crash wasn't punished, and the driver's wife hinted at Kim Jun's involvement. Meanwhile, after returning from an event at the orphanage, Kim Jun received photos showing a meeting between Shan-yeol and Soo-hyun. Back with Soo-hyun, who was still investigating her son Gun-woo's accident, she stumbled upon a box belonging to Soo-ho. Inside, she found various pieces of evidence linking important officials to the case. Soo-hyun then realized that Soo-ho had been secretly working hard to investigate Gun-woo's death all along. Shortly after, Soo-hyun confronted Soo-ho, asking why he had stopped investigating Gun-woo's case even though he had uncovered so much. Soo-ho explained that he was worried the investigation might put Soo-hyun in danger, so he decided to stop because he didn't want to lose her. After their conversation, Soo-ho approached Kim Jun and offered a deal. He promised to help smooth Kim Jun's path to becoming president in exchange for a high-ranking position in the government. At the same time, Shan-yeol, who couldn't accept his mother's death, started planning his revenge against Kim Jun. His plan to take down Kim Jun began by meeting with several members of Congress and showing them evidence of their crimes. He wanted to scare them into realizing that once Kim Jun, who was seen as an honest politician, became president, they could easily be removed from power. Kim Jun's reputation as a good politician continued to grow, especially with the help of Soo-ho, who worked at a news agency. Polls showed that many people thought Kim Jun was the best choice for president. While Kim Jun was busy with his campaign, Shan-yeol began digging into the various crimes the politician had committed. He also asked Soo-jin to investigate the Jinsung Foundation, which was suspected of being where Kim Jun hid his illegal funds. Meanwhile, Soo-hyun was also investigating Kim Jun, especially his close relationship with Ji-woong. However, she was still confused as to why Kim Jun would kill Eunmin, Ji-woong's wife. One day, Shan-yeol told Soo-hyun about Eunmin's last words, which mentioned a tablet. Shan-yeol found this strange because, as far as he knew, his mother didn't own such a device. Hearing this, Soo-hyun became convinced that the tablet was a key clue to exposing Kim Jun's crimes. Later, Soo-hyun ran into Hae-gum, who warned her to live a good life and not to get involved in Kim Jun's affairs. Hae-gum was worried about Soo-hyun's safety since Kim Jun was known to be dangerous. Despite the warning, Soo-hyun insisted that she would continue her investigation because she believed Gun-woo deserved justice. One day, as Hae-gum was preparing to move, she visited Soo-hyun and mentioned that she had seen Gun-woo carrying a tablet on the day he died. Realizing the importance of this, Soo-hyun quickly began searching for the tablet, thinking it might hold crucial evidence against Kim Jun. Meanwhile, Yuri visited Go-eun's restaurant and was surprised by Go-eun's odd behavior. Go-eun seemed to forget that Gun-woo had passed away, which left Yuri concerned. Soo-hyun later met with Shan-yeol to discuss the missing tablet and how it might be connected to Eun-min's last words. Shan-yeol also mentioned another clue that there's a memory card hidden in a locket. When Soo-hyun accessed the memory card, it led them to a pawn shop where Gun-woo's tablet might be. Wasting no time, Soo-hyun and Shan-yeol headed to the pawn shop. However, they realized that Kim Jun's men were following them, and Shan-yeol, riding his motorbike, tried to distract the men to give Soo-hyun a chance to reach the pawn shop safely. When Soo-hyun arrived at the pawn shop, she finally found Gun-woo's tablet. On it was a voice recording between Ji-woong and Kim Jun, revealing that Kim Jun was the one who hit Gun-woo. On the day of the accident, Kim Jun was drunk and didn't want to take Gun-woo to the hospital because he feared it would ruin his reputation. Instead, he ordered Ji-woong to cover up the incident and take the blame. Soo-hyun was shocked by what she heard, while Shan-yeol, who had been listening from behind the door, was silently processing the harsh truth. In the past, on the day Gun-woo died, some government officials, including Ji-woong and Kim Jun, were drinking together at a bar. Suddenly, Ji-woong received a phone call from Eun-min, who told him that Shan-yeol was in critical condition due to his heart disease. Ji-woong quickly left the bar, while Kim Jun, who was also leaving but still half-drunk, got into his car and started driving. While talking to Hae-gum on the phone, Kim Jun wasn't paying attention and accidentally hit Gun-woo, who was crossing the street. When Kim Jun realized what he had done, he started to call an ambulance but then remembered that this incident could ruin his reputation. Instead, he called Ji-woong, who was at the hospital. There, they met and made a deal that Ji-woong would take care of Gun-woo and confess to the crime in Kim Jun's place. In return, Kim Jun promised to pay for Shan-yeol's heart transplant. Without wasting time, Ji-woong went to where Gun-woo was, finished him off, and left his body in the middle of the road. Back in the present, after Soo-hyun and Shan-yeol both learned the truth about what happened, they were overwhelmed with regret and sadness. Meanwhile, Go-eun had been secretly hiding her Alzheimer's disease because she didn't want to burden Soo-hyun. She often went to the hospital for treatment without telling her daughter. The next day, the media was buzzing with news about Kim Jun's success as a presidential candidate, with many people believing he would be the next president. And Soo-ho, who had now aligned himself with Kim Jun, was willing to do anything to help Kim Jun achieve his dream, including stealing the tablet with evidence of Kim Jun's crimes that Soo-hyun had stored in a safe at home. Even though Soo-hyun was under increasing pressure, she refused to stay silent because she didn't want the person who ruined her life to become president. Soo-hyun decided to go to the police station to ask them to reopen the case of Gun-woo's accident. A few days later, Soo-hyun met with Shan-yeol again, and Shan-yeol apologized for everything that had happened. At that time, Soo-hyun understood that Gun-woo's death wasn't Shan-yeol's fault and forgave him. She also apologized to Shan-yeol, who didn't hesitate when he decided to confront Ji-woong. They both agreed to work together to stop Kim Jun from committing more crimes. On another day, Shan-yeol and his friends started meeting with people who had been victims of Kim Jun's Jinsung Foundation. At first, the victims were hesitant to sign a petition, but after hearing Shan-yeol's story about how much he had suffered because of Kim Jun, they began to sympathize and agreed to help. After collecting documents with complaints and statements from the victims, Shan-yeol handed them over to Soo-hyun. Soo-hyun was worried that Shan-yeol was getting too involved, but Shan-yeol reassured her that he wouldn't give up, even if she told him not to seek revenge. That evening, Soo-hyun visited her mother's house and panicked when she couldn't find Go-eun at home. She searched around and eventually found her mother crying in the garden. When Soo-hyun asked what was wrong, she was shocked to hear Go-eun talking as if Gun-woo were still alive. There, Soo-hyun finally realized that something was seriously wrong with her mother. The next day, Soo-hyun held a press conference to announce that she was returning to her work as a writer. She did this in front of a large audience to draw public attention, planning to use the moment to expose Kim Jun's crimes to the media. During the press conference, Soo-hyun revealed that Kim Jun was responsible for the accident that killed her son. Soo-hyun's statement shocked the public, leading to both her and Kim Jun being called to the police station for questioning. When Kim Jun arrived, he tried to stay calm in front of the media. During this time, Kim Jun played a recording of the last conversation between Soo-hyun and Ji-woong. Using this recording, Kim Jong-un's supporters accused Soo-hyun of being part of a scheme by Kim Jong-un's political opponents to stop him from becoming president. Despite the negative press against her, Soo-hyun remained determined to reveal the truth about Kim Jong-un's crimes. Meanwhile, Go-eun decided to move to the countryside to find peace and avoid being a burden to Soo-hyun due to her Alzheimer's disease. And Soo-hyun, understanding her mother's wishes, didn't force her to stay, especially since she was busy with everything going on and couldn't always be there to take care of her. Sometime later, news about Go-eun's illness reached Soo-ho. At that time, he felt confused and unsure about how to help Soo-hyun and her family, especially since he was now allied with Kim Jong-un. On another day, Soo-hyun decided to protest alone to seek justice for Gun-woo. When Yuri found out, she immediately contacted several journalists to write articles about Soo-hyun's fight for justice. These articles, which supported Soo-hyun, caught the attention of many people, and soon, more and more began to focus on Gun-woo's case. This also caused public trust in Kim Jong-un to decline. Meanwhile, Shan-yeol confronted Kim Jong-un on the rooftop of a building. Furious, Shan-yeol tried to attack Kim Jong-un and nearly pushed him off the roof, but Kim Jong-un's men arrived just in time to stop Shan-yeol and beat him up badly. At the same time, Soo-hyun's determination began to inspire others. People who had once helped her started showing up to support her again. Positive comments about Soo-hyun spread on social media, and soon, many people joined her protest, even though Kim Jong-un's men tried to stop them. Sometime later, during one of Kim Jong-un's large-scale campaign events, Soo-ho unexpectedly aired an exclusive broadcast on a television station, revealing evidence of Kim Jong-un's involvement in Gun-woo's death. It turned out that Soo-ho had secretly teamed up with Shan-yeol to expose Kim Jong-un's crimes. He had pretended to be on Kim Jong-un's side just so he could bring him down from the inside. Turns out, the broadcast succeeded in making people sympathize with Soo-hyun, and many of Kim Jong-un's supporters withdrew their backing, not wanting to support a presidential candidate who was a murderer. And it didn't take long after the news aired for the police to arrest Kim Jong-un and take him to the station. His career came to an abrupt end as everyone turned against him, and even his closest allies, who had always supported him, no longer wanted anything to do with him. A few days later, Kim Jong-un's trial for Gun-woo's murder took place. With all the evidence and witnesses presented, the judge sentenced Kim Jong-un to life in prison. In the final scenes, Soo-ho is shown returning to his job as a news announcer while also helping take care of Go-eun. Soo-hyun makes peace with Yuri and has become a successful writer who mentors many children. Meanwhile, Shan-yeol finally continues his studies as a medical student. The series ends. The moral lesson from this series is if you're planning to be president, maybe don't let a lost tablet, a nosy writer, and a guy with a grudge ruin your plans. And remember, trying to cover up your mess is like trying to hide a giraffe in a broom closet. Everyone's gonna notice.